But first of all, welcome everyone. This is hopefully one of the first and many exciting events that you can attend and being introduced to fantastic startups that UNSW helps to grow. And let me just set the scene for today's discussion, like why we're here today and what's the point. I'm here, my name is Dina, Titkova, and I'm here to represent UNSW Founders. And I would love to use this opportunity to welcome you to the most entrepreneurial university in Australia. Why do I say so? Because UNSW Founders exist to support people like you, staff, students, alumni, and not only to convert your ideas, research, small ideas into meaningful, impactful businesses. What do we do and how do we do this? We interact with over 15,000 people per year on a various type of basis. We support over 400 project-based teams and startups, and we run over 10 programs from ideation stage to late stage so-called accelerators, as well as angel investor force. And why I'm confident we can do this and it works, and you're welcome to join the community, because over past years, we invested in 63 startups. Those startups joined, we raised over 87 million in funding and created 500 jobs. And those are people who've been on a journey for us for less than 5 years. And just to reiterate the stat that our director likes to point out, the majority of jobs will be created by the companies who may not even exist today. So the trend is, it is a startup who will bring the innovation, the creation of jobs and prosperity to Australia as well. And maybe digging a bit more, why I'm the one sitting here and fireside chatting today, just because I joined UNSW in 2019, and I was brought to launch and run a small pilot, which was called Health 10X program. We partnered with the Georgia Institute for Global Health, and we had a big ambition. We will find the next cochlear, and we will really support companies developing interventions, cures for the world's biggest global health challenges and unmet clinical needs. Okay, we agreed on the pilot, and here was I was about to recruit the very first cohort of those brave companies venturing to join a pilot program. And Greg, the co-founder and CEO of Evidentli, was one of those brave companies joining an experimental pilot program in 2019, and the rest is history. I will let Greg later on to talk more on where they are now, but I will just tell you that back in 2019, what we were impressed with is a team of experts of their field within business, healthcare, IT research, dedication, and absolute desire to make this work. I must admit as well, and I will let Lamont, who will introduce himself later on, to elaborate more on this. Back in 2019, when Greg pitched us this beautiful idea that AI solution will reduce the waste and save billions of dollars to healthcare, we politely smiled, but we never quite got what was the AI doing and how you grow the business out of it.
She's being nice. No one understood what we did. They just liked that we smiled and spoke loudly.
We just saw the potential in you as a team because we called UNSW Founders. And what impressed me over past almost 4 years that I worked with Greg and with his team, and was the difficult COVID years, it's their vision, we will make it work, their resilience of pivoting on the go and making sure that we know we're addressing the right problem with the right solution. We may just find the right way of reaching out the market. And of course, it's been fascinating to follow their progress. And I'm not sure how Greg will be able to really convey about their latest achievements today, because they have quite a few. But we're excited to be with them on this journey over the past 4 years. So with this, I'll just stop on the introduction note and setting the scene. And I guess I'll pass to Lamont first, who is wearing a few hats, and I'll just let you to introduce yourself.
Thank you, Dina. And thank you to both AGSM for hosting this event and Dina and UNSW Founders for coordinating this. And thank you, Greg, for coming. So I'm on the faculty of AGSM, and I'm also the entrepreneur in residence. So I wear two hats today. I'm here to help support people, especially the AGSM cohort here, that are interested in entrepreneurship. I also teach strategy and data analytics and decision making. So maybe a good number of you guys are here from data analytics and decision making. And so we'll talk about the role of AI in creating business value. So maybe, so I also help support UNSW Founders, where I help mentor some of their startups. Most recently, I'll give a shout out to one of my groups, Nanoscale, who was a finalist in the Pure Feral Cup. And so if there are any other groups here that would like to discuss, happy to talk to you guys about that. But today, mainly just to learn more about Greg's company, Evidentli, and sort of his journey throughout AGSM and through his entrepreneurial journey, I guess, from going from Microsoft to Apple to an ASX company in healthcare, and finally to founding his own company.
Over to you, Greg. Just if you really introduce yourself to the audience about your journey, when exactly you've been part of AGSM, became a part of AGSM community, and what happened post AGSM as well.
Sure. So I actually was in this office, these offices, when they first opened 20 years ago. So I came to the AGSM when I was 11. So, and, which is kind of sad. So I was class of 2003, and I came here from the States to do an MBA full time because I wanted to do something completely different, and knowing that I wanted to stay in technology, I wanted to kind of live outside the United States. And I thought I was going to be here for a year and a half, and then go home. And I ended up staying because it's Sydney and it's really hard to leave once you get here. So yeah, I came here in 2003. And after finishing up, it was kind of a pretty dark period economically. So it was kind of the dot-com boom that happened, and then the bust was happening. And then there was this whole Enron thing, and the economy was collapsing. So it was really difficult to find employment after the MBA. I was lucky enough that I actually managed to land something after 6 or 9 months of looking around, and stayed here in technology, and was in the big tech companies, Microsoft and Apple, for quite a while. And then decided to go into the world of startups, and led an ASX listed health tech company for a while. And in that met my co-founders, and was incredibly impressed with them. And I met them at a conference in Queensland, and they said they had this interesting piece of technology that they've been developing in a lab at the university for the last 15 years. And they wanted to spin it out. And they said, hey, you look like you understand a bit about software. Do you want to come do this with us? And I said, sure, might as well. Let's give it a shot. I didn't know COVID was about to happen, but at the time I said, yeah, sure, let's do it. And here we are, four years later.
So just that, if we put a timestamp, when exactly did you meet with your co-founders? Just to help to realize what the journey was about. 2017, 2018,
I think. Yeah.
The one key things behind the company Evidentli that it's research-based startup. So it's basically commercializing the outcome of the leading research groups. And it's something we really heavily promote at UNSW and trying to work hard towards how we make successful companies based on research. There are a few caveats around this. So I do hope we uncover a few of those in this conversation as well. Can you just guide us a bit through the journey? You met with the founders. You said, yes, I'm jumping into the world of a startup. There is a piece of research. What's next?
Okay, what does it actually do is understanding what this technology did and how you actually apply it in a commercial sense. Right? Where's the market, and how do you actually find some level of product market fit? At the time, New South Wales Health had launched this global innovation challenge, where they had these open offer for anyone in the world to solve some problems that they kind of listed. They had these 5 problems, and like there was 200, maybe it was 170 applicants, including like Google Health and IBM Watson and a bunch of people from the States. And we actually won that. which was surprising to me. And yeah, it kind of went from there.
And then when Greg and his co-founders applied into health next, they came with this.
We came and we were certain we were going to be a unicorn inside of 6 months.
Yes.
We were positive, right? Because New South Wales Health is the second largest public health system in the world.
Yeah.
Right. So it's the NHS, then New South Wales Health. So if you get New South Wales Health, you are away. We were convinced we were gone.
Yeah.
Convinced.
We liked the energy. We liked the founders. We liked the fact that it's research based, the whole dedication and background. But then during the program was a bit of different type of a journey for Evidentli. And just if you can tell us more about where did you get your resilience from? What was it about?
The first thing was, we went into this award, right? So we had to go implement our software in these hospital systems, and it relies on another piece of technology. And it's kind of like an SAP system for healthcare. It's called an EMR. And as it turns out, New South Wales Health has put this EMR in, so you can't actually get anything out of it. And we kind of rely on that. And New South Wales Health didn't fully understand the problem until this effort. So we then quickly realized we weren't going to be a unicorn overnight because New South Wales Health couldn't actually use our technology. Mm-hmm. It took us about a year to figure that out. So there's kind of a year of cash burned. Mm-hmm. You know, you're hiring, we're doing all these great things, and suddenly we realized that this actually isn't going to work in this health system, which is a bit gut wrenching.
Mm-hmm. And with this, if you can just give us all a bit of a overview, what exactly Evidentli does and tries to achieve.
Okay, so how many people understand, you know medical research is? Raise your hands, and it's all really hard, right? So it takes years and years and years, and you have a bunch of PhDs and scientists spending tons of time with these labs that are essentially answering technical and complex questions. 70% of that effort is in data. It's in acquiring data and amalgamating it in a sense where you can actually interrogate it. And our software allows you to cleanse and put this data together in a fraction of the time, meaning days, weeks compared to months, years, and in a fraction of the cost that it takes today.
And can we pause on this? And I would really just to have a show of hands, how many people now understand what Evidentli does, to be honest? Okay.
Well, there's actually, this is a question I like to ask. So how would you explain this to either my 5-year-old or to my mom?
Okay, all right. So it's a bit like converting languages, right? So imagine that your one piece of the data is in Spanish, one's in French, one's in English, one's in Arabic, one's in Aramaic or something, some ancient language, and you need to put them all in English. And we use artificial intelligence to do that, and we can convert these sentences that are missing half of the words into English and actually understanding the sentences. So we can, if that makes sense, we can do that, but for research data.
And that's just to reiterate, that's based on the leading research from eHealth, from the Center for eHealth.
Center for Health Informatics.
Yes, out of Macquarie University. So that was validated on the technology side. And what we've been working since 2019 is really how to apply and communicate the benefits of this technical solution to people, the right people, within various types of businesses to convert it into commercial opportunity. And if you can just give us a bit of a also overview how you've been really building this capacity and relationship and partnerships and going through this challenge of.
What I might first start to talk about, this is how we pitched this initially. So has everyone heard the term medical evidence? Right. So when COVID came about, everyone's familiar with it. So we were doing this before COVID. No one had heard of it by then, but we said we can automate the production of medical evidence. And if you think about healthcare, every decision has to be based on research and evidence. And it can be how much Panadol to give someone, how many MRI machines you need, how many beds you need in the ward, how many nurses you should have in the emergency room on a Friday evening. all of these should be based on evidence. So every single thing that happens in healthcare is based on research and decades of research. Now, the reason healthcare is so costly to change is because it takes so much. It takes so much time and effort to produce this piece of evidence. So typically 10 to 12 years to answer one question in healthcare, just one question. Like, should I give a child an extra dose of Panadol? Right, that's a 12-year question. It would cost millions of dollars. And so the reason that healthcare doesn't work as well as it could is because it costs so much and takes so long to do these things. So our view is that if we can solve this problem of creating medical evidence and turn that into days and weeks compared to 12 years, you can fix the cost of healthcare, you can fix how you cure diseases, you can fix how you treat people, you can do all these things. You can empower the global medical community, right? So it is a massive, grandiose vision. So realizing that vision is very, very difficult.
So Greg, really quickly, so we have actually in our class some medical doctors and some clinicians.
Are any of you here?
They may be in the part-time group.
Part-time
Yeah,
group.
yeah. So one of the questions that they have is, so at what level are we at now, either the general state of AI or for your particular company, in making these clinical decisions? How certain are you of, when you think about like how safe, what's the threshold for safety in making these decisions? So just for the audience here, like one example we will bring up in class is, for example, in Tesla's case, when do we feel comfortable as a society to actually have self-autonomous cars on the road? Some will say it should be 10 times safer than what humans are, right? And you hear these sensational things like, oh no, Tesla just killed somebody. But if you look statistically, maybe they're much better than humans. So we'd love to just put this on the healthcare side. Do you have a sense of where we are in that, and then where's your technology within that competitive landscape?
So we don't use our technology to tell a doctor what to do. So that's the first thing. I don't believe that's ever going to work. There are some that use this for diagnoses, meaning these things. Technology look at X-rays and can pick out tumors better than people can, and those are augmented. I don't think you'll ever replace a human in the loop. I don't think you really want to. Because I don't think, so AI is trained on data, right? And you train it on a lot of data. And I don't think you're ever going to get all of the data you need to replicate a human. I think AI is very good at doing very specific things and only those things. So does that answer your question?
Yeah, no, that actually puts it really well into one of our discussions, which is sort of the appropriate use of AI in different business contexts. And so in the case of healthcare, it's becoming clear that even though we can do things like detect diabetes through machine learning, computer vision of the retina, you may actually want to put the final judgment for the human in the loop, for the doctor in this case. I think the question here then would be, maybe we can start delving into maybe not the technical weeds, but just sort of in broad strokes, what are some of the big challenges that from a business context that we would want, is there sort of like a way we could think about where AI can generate a lot of value from low-hanging fruit? For example, maybe medical records where, machine learning can do a much better job than humans in that sort of space. And I don't know if there's a way you can describe for the cohorts here, sort of how you triage in your own mind from a business point of view, where's the low-hanging fruit at the moment, and sort of where do you see, and I think you already addressed one part, which is we don't think at this point that you'd ever want AI to make a clinical decision.
A treatment decision.
Yeah, treatment decision.
You don't want it to tell you how to treat you. So where can you apply AI? I think you can apply AI with low-value, high-cost tasks. So it could be deciding, deciding what term to apply to a headache, right? Based on a number of different things, and just use that to clean up medical records. You can use it, so we use it to understand data and normalize and synthesize data. Normally you would have consultants in there for years. You'd have a Deloitte or an Accenture or someone like that come in and spend years and tens of millions of dollars trying to do this because they need to be medically trained and they need to understand all these very complex terms. And they need to read each medical record uniquely. If there are millions of medical records and millions of encounters, it takes a long time. So that's where I think you use AI. You use AI to provide infrastructure to empower people and to empower the clinical community or any community, right? So if you can make smart and intelligent infrastructure, as opposed to making decisions for people, give them the information they need, give them the tools they need faster to allow them to make decisions.
Just building on this, what was then the turning point for Evidentli? You already told us about the whole New South Wales health
So,
collapse, and then what did you do differently to really bend the curve and go on the growth pathway?
So after that, we learned a lot about which customers were the right ones for us and which ones weren't, based on where they were on their kind of digital maturity journey, shall we say. And we identified a bunch of those, and we went and spoke to them through kind of network. And we had 6 of them agree to do pilots with us. And this was in December of 2019. So we were kind of January, February, things got a bit quiet. We had about 3 months of cash left, and then COVID hit. And so I said, okay, this is going to be fun. We've got 3 months of cash and no prospects of any revenues at all, because the health system is completely buried, and they're not going to talk to anyone at the moment. So we had to go raise some money really quickly. And we're lucky that we have networks. We had some networks of people that knew us. And the federal government's subsidies and things like that really helped as well. But so for that kind of 18-month period, we doubled down on product, and I doubled down on building awareness of us in partnerships. So when demand, we were pretty confident we had a good product, because every time we spoke to someone, the customer, they got really excited about it. So we knew we were onto something. And we also started to build the team out. So we started to build groups of advisors. One thing you may not know is that Australia has some of the best minds in the world without question in digital health. And that's really without question. The guy that created a technology here that's legislated to be used in the United States in all digital health applications by 2023. It has to be. And it's going to happen in Europe. So he's part of the team. He's joined up. The gentleman that created the discipline of evidence-based medicine, along with 2 other people at Oxford in the 80s, is Australian. So he's joined up. One of the winners of the highest awards in health informatics globally. Only 10 people have ever won it. This person's joined up. So we brought all these people together in this process to say, okay, some of them were kind of involved to begin with, but we began to add to them to build the team up.
So you basically use this very heavy, difficult COVID years everyone already forgot how long did it last, to really build the foundation, which is team.
Yeah.
And then from what time then it's springboarded into.
Well, we started talking to partners. So we got very close to Amazon, AWS, and spent a lot of time building relationships and evangelizing what we do with them, and also with global thought leaders in the space. So we get on the phone with people in the UK, in Europe, and then just as COVID was kind of ending, or maybe it was kind of the first pass of COVID ending, it was December of 2020, I guess. We got a hit on our website, and someone from the Ministry of Health of Israel said, "Hey, can I have a demo of your software?" I said, "That's strange." "Sure, how'd you hear about us?" And sure enough, someone in the Netherlands had told them. The person in the Netherlands had heard from someone in France, had heard from someone in the United States. As it turns out, the Ministry of Health was looking for our specific technology and the technology we standards on to build a national data set. So to put the entire country on something like we did. And we said, all right, clearly we got this right, if Israel is doing this. And they did this massive evaluation and said that we're the best product by miles, but they wouldn't build a national asset on a 5-person company. And I said, yeah, all right, fair enough. So that's when we decided to raise and get really serious. And then from then we've been, we've gone into several pilots. And these are usually with jurisdictional health agencies or national governments. And we're at a point now where there's going to start turning into pretty sizable revenue streams. The thing about the health system is when you actually do a pilot with the health system, meaning that they try your technology, the health system is so slow moving, and there is so much inertia there that when they do a pilot, unless you truly break something, they're going to transact with you, right? It's just it's how big is the transaction is going to be. The size of the transaction is going to depend on how much value your product actually adds, but they're going to transact with you because it takes them a year to actually get a pilot done. So
it takes about a year to get it done. What's the typical sales cycle?
Yes.
well, that's what we're figuring out now. So there's one. It's a state here in Australia that has committed to us that they're going to use us as a state standard. So roll out across the entire state. That was pre-COVID, so it's been 2.5 years. We are speaking to a country's health system, and we were introduced to them 6 weeks ago, and they'd like to get something done by December. And they're looking for exactly what we build. And literally, I'm talking to the right people that has a deep understanding of informatics, health informatics, and they're looking for exactly what we've done. And we're really lucky. My co-founder started building this in 2012. So, yeah.
Just very briefly, we have maybe 100 or more students that are not here live. But what are the type of people that you're looking for? And maybe they're listening in. Like, what's your ideal customer? Who's the stakeholder that you're trying to?
Yeah. So they are typically digital health and innovation people. They are concerned about healthcare quality, safety, and sustainability. And they have an understanding of what's called health informatics or data, and the challenges of data in healthcare. So those are probably if I was to say the 3 axes that we look for, those are the 3, and we can find. So that role, those characteristics are encapsulated in a role called a chief medical information officer, or your chief clinical information officer. And you'll see that in other industries too, right? So there was at one point a chief marketing information officer when digital marketing took off. There's a chief financial information officer for a lot of fintech areas. So now it's in medicine.
And maybe just also on the point where you're now, can you just give us a bit of more flavor how next 6 months look like for Evidentli?
Yeah, so we have a large deal on the table with the 2nd or 3rd largest pharma in the world. Again, kind of accidentally, they came to us, and I don't know that we'll actually do that. Believe it or not, that's a very big deal. It's multiple millions of dollars because we want to fix healthcare, and life sciences can be a bit of a distraction. So we're thinking about that. We have a bunch of fairly well progressed pilots. Here in Australia, and we have a couple internationally signing up. We're in the process with the world's largest health system for a multi-billion-dollar solution that's going to do essentially what we do. And I don't know if we'll win that, but it's nice being included. It's real David versus Goliath stuff. Let's see what else is happening. We're building our advisory board, so we're adding some folks from other informatics programs at Harvard and other types of academic institutions in the States and Europe. So we're going to continue to build out that kind of network.
How many people are you missing at the moment? Like how many?
About 100.
100.
They're hiring.
It's always the chicken and egg thing, right? So if we close, when these deals start to close, we're going to have a real problem because we're going to need to deliver them. So we're trying to figure out balancing the timing of building kind of a management team, a broader management team. We're in the process of doing that now and defining what that looks like. So, I mean, right now we have 4 or 5 open roles, and those are probably more kind of boots on the ground. Some of them are technical, some of them are kind of customer implementation and satisfaction focused. We need some commercial help in defining I mean, a lot of things commercially. We'd like someone to have a look and think through pricing with me. We'd like to think through go-to-market with me. We'd like to get some people evangelizing and helping us. We don't really need to open doors. Doors get open, but kind of help us work through and solve customer problems because we don't really sell. That's not our approach. We don't go out and try to sell things. We try to see if we can solve a problem. So you almost have to have a consultative background to do that. So I guess those are probably the types of people. Well, we'll need some type of finance person at some point because if things really move the way we can, we're going to be bringing a lot of capital in and we're going to be spending a lot of money very quickly. We need to have some level of visibility as to what that looks like. And that's a full-time role, quite senior on that. So we'll need essentially all the types of commercial infrastructure you can imagine to build a global software business probably in the next 18 months.
And what is the, you've been on a corporate side of things, you've been on a startup side of things. How would you sell the startup job, which is still maybe not that secure? What's the opportunities you see for being a startup ecosystem versus a more stable corporate job, Monday to Friday, no ups and downs, no fundraising?
Yeah. What I like about it is you can kind of determine your own job, right? So we kind of have a general idea of where we need help, but we're not going to tell anyone what to do. And there's no real boundaries, right? We don't say you have to, the role stops and starts anywhere. If you see problems, go and solve them. We're very entrepreneurial. So it's very broad. You can kind of really define what the future looks like as opposed to being told what the future should look like. Obviously the startups are probably a bit more casual. We don't have offices, so to speak. We have a little place we get together, which is UNSW. We'll probably get an office shortly. And also, I mean, financially upside, right? So there's equity. So if things, we plan on giving most of the company away. So my founders and I, right? We're not. Our goal is not to go buy a massive yacht. We want to fix healthcare. And if we can do that, that's what success looks like for us. So yeah, it'd be great to be mortgage free, and that's the plan. But hopefully, a whole bunch of people can be if this thing really works.
Thanks, Greg. No, that's I think the right mindset, solving problems. So let's say 5 years from now, what do you sort of see? Where do you see Evidentli, and also what do you see the state of healthcare? Like, where do you sort of see 5, 10 years down the line?
So I think that there is going to be a big correction in health tech coming. Right? There have been billions of dollars invested in healthcare AI, and these people are saying that they're going to change the world. And a lot of them have sidestepped the process of the scientific method. They haven't been transparent. Things haven't been peer reviewed. It's just a bunch of hype, and it's everywhere. And so there's going to be a big correction, and we're already starting to see that. I think what you will see is the health tech that sticks and works is going to be focused on enablement and enabling the clinical community and unlocking the capacity in the health system, because these are some of the best and brightest minds we have. And they are hellishly busy running around, like, as I say, blue ass flies, trying to follow these policies and procedures that may or may not make sense because of reasons of reimbursement or governance or what have you. And if we can allow them to inform themselves as to the best treatment pathways, build consensus quickly as to what those are, you'll start to see some real change. So I think the real promise in healthcare is the speed with which we will enable the healthcare community to learn. If we can allow the industry and the healthcare community to learn, and these incredibly talented people to learn very quickly at that speed and that scale, that's what's really going to move the healthcare.
If you don't mind, before I turn it back to you, Dina, just going a little bit deeper. And we'll discuss this in our class, data analytics and decision making, at the later parts, where Tom Davenport is like this, one of the rock stars, and sort of how you translate AI into business value. So his thesis is that it's actually not going to be automation that we should be worried about, but exactly what sort of you're talking about. Outside the healthcare industry is what we call augmentation, but it sounds similar to what you're calling enablement.
Yeah, well, clinical augmentation.
Yes, so maybe you can just describe for the cohort here a little bit more about sort of where they can sort of sink their teeth in. For example, and this is maybe another question actually, for those that are for those managers that are maybe less technical, how do they start wrapping their head around it? Or do you have any things that you sort of or maybe you do have a technical background,
No, I don't.
so maybe you can help them sort of understand how would they enter this space, how would they think about,
Well, AI is just statistics, right? So it's a bunch of regressions that tell you what's going to happen. It's just there's millions and millions of variables you're looking at. Sorry, that's probably oversimplistic, but that's kind of what it is. So if you want to understand AI, go figure out SaaS. That's probably the first thing I would suggest. In terms of technology, I picked it up just kind of through osmosis because I kind of started in software when software wasn't cool back in the 90s when this thing called the internet was out there and we were trying to figure out what to do with it. And so I've just kind of I've picked it up over time. So yeah, I think does that answer your question in terms of how you get around AI?
Yeah. I think you mentioned like statistics and then just through osmosis, technology, being involved in technology.
Yeah, that's what I would say. I would get close to a technical project. I would read some literature. I'd find some websites or blogs. Look at, if you're interested in healthcare, look at Digital Health News, look at Pulse IT. Those are a couple of the sites. And you'll hear, look at industry publications and things like that. And you'll start to, and eventually you'll figure it out. Google can answer just about everything for you reasonably well. So if you get really curious, you can go down any rabbit hole you want to with technology.
I think the lesson here is maybe curiosity.
Yeah.
And then I'll turn it over to you, Dina. But so one of the things that we find in founders is sort of, especially people coming from a business background, is how do you find the right technical co-founder, or vice versa? How does a technical co-founder find the right business partner? So can you describe a little bit about sort of the, it's almost like a marriage, and so there's a dating process. Can you describe that a little bit for the cohort here?
So we're my co-founder and I are quite different. That's probably fair to say.
Yes.
So he's an academic and isn't probably commercially view this as a developmental area. As a matter of fact, the reason he wanted me to join is because he said I can learn a lot about the business side of things from this person. And then I think he's realized that you can't really get 20 years of knowledge in a period of months if you're busy. So we have some very direct and honest conversations, and we don't hold back on those. We believe, I guess both of us believe that this business is bigger than us, right? This is not about us. This is not an ego thing. We actually are here to try to make the world a better place. And if we are committed to that, and the reason we've been able to get some globally known people to work with us is because this is not about us, right? This is about actually trying to move the needle on healthcare. And if we can move the needle on healthcare sustainability and equity and all those types of things, then that's great. That's what we're here to do. And I think that's probably the most important thing. A lot of founders run into trouble because of ego and personality bust-ups. And founder bust-up is all due to it's ego. There's just no humility there typically. So yeah, I think that's probably it.
And if I can just remind myself and yourself, just one event when I was a part of a heated debate between Greg and Guy, got so scared. Oh my goodness, Guy, what's happening? There, like, no. That's how we solve everything on the spot. Don't worry.
So we had a disagreement, and Dina was in a room with us, and she thought the company was going to end right there.
So yeah, I ran after them because I was really. But that's how we solve things on the spot.
Well, it's actually not unlike a marriage as well. You want to get things done, not go to bed happy. And
You know what, Lamont, just back to actually the course you're running. We all know the statistics that's out there. Australia needs minimum 1 million of IT graduates or AI engineers by like 2024, 2025. Do you agree with this? And how do you see, like, shall we all convert into engineers or enough taking your course to get the high level? What is like your personal views of where we need to build the talent and where all of us may think about our future development as well?
Yeah, I mean, so if I understand the question correctly, is sort of we have these strategic goals in Australia for building our STEM capabilities. I have found Australia punching above their weight. So the engineers, computer scientists that I meet, and sort of, I've not technically met Guy yet, but just from what I've seen so far, it just looks, fantastic. I think, and really, this is one of the reasons why I'm here. I didn't mention this in the intro, but I'm also a mentor and advisor and judge at Stanford Start X, where we select the top 5% of Stanford entrepreneurs. And I think the creme of the creme here, is just as good as anywhere. So but I do think there is everywhere, not just in Australia, but everywhere. There is, for whatever reason, there's still a gap in just the pure number of graduates coming with these degrees. I have some nephews and nieces in high school, and I don't think their sights aren't being like in mathematics, engineering, and science. It's like being a YouTuber now. So I think that there has to be something about sort of the vision that Greg has outlaid here. Sort of like, how do we fix the world? How do we have these visions that, and you actually starting to see this Gen Z, where they are more mission driven for sure. But how do we communicate better to this next generation, sort of the importance of learning some of these harder skills? And it's really, and sometimes I think we have to take the long view, and this applies to also the managers that I, see here at AGSM, is, a lot of them, and we do try and give things, spoon-fed so that everything is, you guys can act on it. You've got key takeaways, but sometimes you do have to delve into the nitty-gritty, and it takes a little bit of time, but it's like, harvesting of, in farming, when you plant those seeds, they can have really good outcomes over time. And I think that's actually one of the lessons here from Evidentli, and I'm just, want to applaud this. 4 years is actually a long time in startup land, and it's fantastic that there's, they still have that commitment, and it's because of this vision that I think you can sort of, really go through these, the winters, we would call them, right? And I think if more students and more people can sort of realize that life is not just all sunshine and rainbows, if we can sort of build that resilience that you spoke to earlier, it's really how we respond to these downtimes. And I think Greg and Guy are sort of, really characterized that. I really have to applaud you guys for that.
Oh, thanks. I think we have to enjoy it. Right?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
It's the journey's got to be the good part, and who you work with matters. I would also say that if you're going to start something, make sure you work with people you really, really like and respect, right? And they need to be people that you want to work with, and people, as you bring them into the company, they need to be people that you want to go out to dinner with and have beer with and do all these things. They have to be. That's what matters.
And that's actually another great point in this, I'm putting my startup world hat now. People is everything, right? It's not just startups, it's corporate world too. And I think that if you have the right people, that's, if you have the right people in the vision, because it doesn't matter how technically brilliant you are or how genius your co-founder is, if they're not gelling, you're not going to move forward. So I think that's some of, for the UNSW founders or people that are considering founding a company, really take that to heart. But it doesn't mean that you're not going to have like, just like you were saying, is you're going to have relationships that are never, there's radical candor, there's radical honesty, be able to have the uncomfortable conversations. That's when you sort of know that you've got something.
And your relationship gets better as a result of it.
Yeah, exactly.
I would just really like to put a happy note to conversation, just reinforce once again. I personally believe there was no better time to be within startup and working with innovation in Australia up to this year, just because the government is ready to support. There is a talent, there is awareness, there is a growing network. And all of you, by nature of being part of UNSW, actually becoming one of the fastest growing startup and innovation communities in Australia because of UNSW dedication to driving entrepreneurship and innovation. Like in practical terms, it means that you all are eligible to receiving business coaching and support For those who are successful being accepted into our high-end accelerator programs like Evidentli did, you're also entitled to have an office space for free at UNSW campus, access to talent, an ecosystem and networks and education opportunities. And I would just encourage all of you to learn, engage, ask, and just maybe have a bit of a try and a conversation of what role you can play to make Australia the leader of innovation.
Yeah, and I would actually say that, so for our hiring, when we hired our engineering teams, we managed to get some really fantastic grads right out of undergrad out of UNSW. And I don't know how Guy did it. I think we talked to you guys and ended up pitching to a lot of the undergrad computer science courses.
Yep.
And we were just blown away by the talent that we were able to pull. So it was really good.
So with this, I would just really love to check if we have any questions that you would like to ask now. Yes, please.
Can you permanently avoid venture capital?
Can you avoid it? I'd like to.
Are you trying to move that way, or?
So we're at a point where we're going to take some, and we've already taken some. So we've raised $2 million just recently. So there's venture capital, and there's venture capital, and there's venture capital. So in Australia, I think you need to be very clear about what venture capitalists here like. They like lightweight tools and lightweight process automation. So generally speaking, so you want something that's going to be entirely
They want
SaaS.
quick money fast.
What's that?
They want quick money fast, quick return fast.
Yeah, they like rapidly innovative, light CAC, light customer acquisition cost business models. Some of those will be
Risk averse.
Yes, some of those. Now, my view is that you won't. It's going to be hard to get something that will drive systemic change in an industry by doing that. Now that may happen, it may not. That's my view. So if you're going to pitch to a VC here, make sure your price points are low, you're digitally distributed, and you can articulate that. That's why they don't like us. We've gotten to the investment committee round with just about all of them here. And at the end of the day, they want to wait on us. And that's okay with me, because also I would suggest when you take investment, you get it from people that can add value, and not just, and every VC says they can add value, and yes, they can help you get more money. But the people that we've taken money from, we've got money from healthcare ventures and medical angels, and their networks and domain expertise are what's really helping.
Any other questions? You can also have an opportunity to network and have some private conversations. But anyone wants to raise? Yeah.
Not really a question, but I'm keen to talk to you more about this, about pharma industry. Well, I suppose working in pharma and selling services and things. I think there's potentially good opportunity for you there.
Oh no, yeah, there is.
There
There is. You're absolutely right. A lot of people in this space are all going into pharma because it's easier. So as I said, we've got a deal on the table with them, and then probably the largest pharma in the world is trying to get into software and trying to get into this space. And they've made a bunch of acquisitions over the last 18 months. Yeah, longer conversation.
Yeah. I think if you want to fix healthcare, you can't avoid that. It's such a huge part of it.
Well, so let me challenge that. Let me say that pharma exists. Pharma exists because they've had the capital to get the data to prove that their innovations are safe. So what happens when the data is democratized? So that's my question, and I think you're gonna really pull apart that value chain. If suddenly the cost of clinical trial goes from 1 billion to 50 million or 10 million or something like that, and you can do things like federated learning, where you don't need to have a bunch of enrollment. Right? Sudden things change.
For the audience that don't know what federated learning, can you explain? Yeah.
So federated learning means it allows you to run analysis all over the world from a central point without touching the data. So I could say, I want to know what A plus B equals. And I will look at all the A's in the UK and all the B's and get an answer, and then all the A's in Japan and all the B's in Japan and get an answer, and all the A's here, all the B's here and get an answer, and just do that centrally from my computer. Right. So that's thinking about all the hospital systems being able to access all of those things very, very quickly.
So when you say saying that, why were you so definitive about it not being able to be extended to a therapeutic protocol?
Sorry, help me understand that.
Originally, maybe I misinterpreted. Originally, you were saying that you didn't think that it would get to the point where the AI informed the clinician.
I think because of evidence-based medicine, translational medicine, and culture. I think if
Not
you look at
because the AI wouldn't be able to.
no, the AI might be able to do it.
Mm.
I don't think we will get there for reasons of. So firstly, and let's be clear. There's tons of bias, right? And so one thing that people say with AI and data is, well, we've eliminated bias because we've used a huge sample size. Well, that's one type. There's 6 more. So how you actually account for all of those things at the bedside when you're deciding what drug and how much of it to give someone, I don't think we're there yet. And it's going to be, you need a lot of data and a lot of disparate and probably seemingly unrelated data to actually to figure that out. And that's why I think evidence-based medicine and the idea of translational medicine, no one's really talking about that process as it relates to digital health. And that's why digital health, you're seeing digital health starting to blow up all over the place because none of them paid attention to that. I believe that.
But there is no actual governance to do that.
There's no governance to do.
To allow digital health to happen. It's not a cultural problem.
So what, well, no, the FDA has ways to improve digital health innovations.
But not for actual clinical decisions.
So clinical decisions.
Like if I take a very tiny example, a physician, not going into inside of surgery and saying, I'm going to make a decision at this point in time based on this piece of technology. He is taking the liability, not the piece of technology.
Oh yeah, of course. Yeah, no, yes, you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right.
So there is no governance to protect the physicians.
No, no technology manufacturer would ever take that level of liability. That's just that's they just won't. That's if you think about what's the point of a doctor or a hospital or a health service, right? There's someone needs to be accountable.
But the doctors are somehow protected not to be inclined to use their technology and enjoy what they're doing today.
Well, that's the thing. You need to make it. You need to conform to how doctors are trained to make decisions. So, and you need to. So, my co-founder did 10 years of ethnographic research on how clinicians make decisions, and that's one of the parts of our product. So, we understand that decision-making model.
Can you help describe just a little bit?
Sure.
Just what is that decision? Because actually, one of the courses teaches data analysis and decision making.
Okay.
Yeah.
So how do doctors make decisions? So high level, a piece of research comes out and it answers a question. That then needs to be peer reviewed. That then needs to be replicated across a bunch of different data sets. The answers are never consistent for reasons that we're trying to fix, which has to do with data. Then there's what's called a systematic review, which is a amalgamation of literature-based research into one single answer. And that's how they're trained to make decisions, by reading essentially systematic reviews or looking at multiple voices of disparate evidence and coming to some type of judgment. So the question is more, how do you enable them to do that at speed and scale? And that's what we're trying to do.
Well, and N equals 1 for the individual. All that is clinically done each time.
Well, yeah, so okay, but N equals 1, but actually when you think about what they do, they don't take, so sorry, we're getting in the weeds here a bit. Doctors don't take advice at the bedside, right? They do it beforehand. They go and read a paper. So how do you enable them to learn much faster?
Yeah, go ahead.
So you're creating a product which would eventually work with data, and not eventually, it works with data, and it works with different healthcare systems or healthcare providers of the world, or should be working with different healthcare providers such as NHS or, as you mentioned, UNSW Health. Right? And all these systems are different. Their data lakes or the data warehouse system that they have, or the simple taxonomy of the data is different.
Yep.
So the data, I can say a water tank. So they have this different water tanks.
You're absolutely right.
So how much customization from your side or from the customer side is required to plug into your system.
That is the
which
power
would-
of our AI.
Okay.
So our AI takes all that different data with different semantics and different schemas and transforms it into a single schema. And that we do it with 99% precision, which is about 3 to 5 times better than people. And we do it between 50 and 100 times faster.
So just very briefly, people introduce these terms, but can you just
Sure.
briefly define data lakes and data?
Data lake,
and then where
so
you're.
data lakes is just, it's essentially, it's like a mess of data, right? It's just a bunch of stuff, a bunch of numbers and.
It's unstructured.
Yeah, it's unstructured. It's just, it's a data warehouse is a table or scheme, or a data that is somewhat organized.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And since you've mentioned that it is like AI is doing most of the hard, like heavy lifting here to like create this marriage between two systems and make a meaningful data from this diversely different systems that all of your customers could eventually have. Now, you also said that you are also trying to build a partner ecosystem, and
Yeah, we are. Yeah, we are.
and generally partners are only coming into picture when you need like a help. You need to help the customers to do the actual implementation or to do the plug and play.
Well, it depends on the type of partner, right? So you can have platform partners and they like you because you drive consumption of their cloud. You can have software vendors where you can come together to add to improve a
Okay,
solution,
got
right? So you can do bolt-on stuff.
Like
And you're talking about
AWS, you're talking to AWS, so
no,
they can be a partner.
that's a platform partner. It
That's
could be an analytic vendor, someone that can do some interesting visualizations that can sit on top of us. That's what you call an ISV or independent software partner. And then there's what you're talking about, systems integrators and implementers. And so they're the ones that make a business out of us. They don't like us that much because they used to make a business out of this data stuff, right? And that's going away. So they got to move up the value chain a bit. And they're trying to figure that out. But that's the nature of that business, right? That's those guys, it's their time materials kind of body shops. So they always have to change.
I'm just mindful we're 2 minutes away from the closing. And I would encourage everyone to continue the conversation post the session as well. But I'd really like to say thank you, Greg and Lamont, for joining forces today.
Thank you.
And thank you, Greg, for being brave, for joining UNSW in 2019 for something that we called pilot. And thank you for showing us what resilience is and showing us that it is possible to drive a successful AI-based businesses here in Australia and grow and solve for the biggest world challenges. We are well plugged to this. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks for coming, guys.
This would really like to encourage you to have a bit of networking.